everybody. This is William Del Pilar, and this is Fired Up California, where I bring you all the conservative, newsworthy topics of the week. And I want to say in an hour, but sometimes they stretches a little shorter, a little longer. But you know what I'm talking about. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for your support in listening to this podcast. Surprisingly, this podcast is one of Grumbling Media's more watch shows. And tonight, we are going to open the discussion with California fighting back. They are suing the feds over the $4 billion high-speed rail to nowhere cuts. Then we're also going to talk about some of the immigration raids and how they're trying to showcase that as a going back to the 1980s and the drug wars. They're trying to put fear into the people to turn them against Donald Trump. I voted for that, so no, it's not working. Then we're going to talk about Newsom's lies laid bare. And he's just been lying a lot. So I wanted to talk about that. Last week I talked about Newsom and how he's just unelectable. One, he's a habitual liar. There's a different term. I always forget it, but he's a chronic liar, habitual liar. He's got a psychological problem with lying because he does it so easily, so blatantly. And that's what makes him such a terrible candidate, because once he leaves the state of California and gets on a national stage, he will be exposed as badly as Tim Walz was, maybe even worse. Then we're going to close it out with the Cali Blitz, as you can surmise, and as most of my longtime listeners, the OGs who've been here since the beginning, know, that is my lightning round. We're going to talk about California's financial transparency, or lack of it. We're going to look at my backyard here, not quite my backyard, but pretty close, 30 minutes away, La Mesa, and how an idiot, she wants to pass a bill, or has proposed a bill to conceal lawmakers' addresses. And then we're going to talk about literally my backyard again, Oceanside, home and cars firebomb because of hate. This is a hate crime targeting a Trump supporter. And so I think we've got a pretty good show for you tonight. But before we begin, do not forget to bookmark grumblingsmedia.com. Bookmark grumblingsmedia.com and follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify under the handle Grumblings Media. And if you are not doing it already, make sure you give us the thumbs up, or in some cases, liking the podcast. And as always, share it once we are done here. So let's get right down to it, my friends. Immigration raids revive war on drugs, fears in cannabis industry. Now, this article here, like I said, how do I do my research? I'll start out with an article here or there, then I'll spread that out, then I'll go to AI, then I'll put it all together. But I always like to give credit to where I found it. And this one came from the California Cannabis Companies hope Trump would be an ally. Then the raids happened. And this is a calmatters.org article by Alexei Kosev, where I found the initial article at. And the reason I say that is because I add to this, I'll take away some of it. The angle may be too leftist, so I do take time out to make sure that this is what you're looking for in terms of the proper news and the truth. A lot of these articles is like, damn, boy, how you call yourself a journalist with that lie? But regardless, the feds raided the legal weed farms in SoCal last week, and they hit a bunch of illegal aliens that included rapists. They exposed and alleged slave-like conditions and allegedly trafficked children. I have to say allegedly because this stuff that has come out that's pretty much there to see and is not alleged, but it has to be proven alleged or it has to be stated that way because it has to be proven in court, even though the obvious has happened. So there were over 360 suspected illegals, again, suspected, that were arrested in Glass House Farms. And as we all know, if you follow this podcast, 14 minors were recovered. And even though it's legal in California, cannabis is still illegal under federal law. And that makes workers in the industry easy targets for deportation. And they're trying to scare you, as if Trump is attacking them because it's the cannabis industry and makes it easy. No, it's because he's looking for illegals and criminals. It's that simple. The cannabis industry wants you to believe it's the old war on drugs playbook is back. And again, that's just false, as it's about illegals breaking trafficking rings and bringing law and order back to this country that has been missing for, gosh, many years. So Trump's team isn't backing off weed enforcement, and it's tied straight to the immigration crackdowns. So what are some of the key topics, the key points in this story that you should be aware of? Well, the cannabis industry claims to be in panic. The United Farm Workers, they posted an urgent message on social media following the raid. They told workers who are not U.S. citizens to avoid jobs in the cannabis industry, even at state licensed facilities. I would encourage them to say, all illegals avoid work and self-deport. They quoted, this is a quote, "We know this is unfair, but we encourage you to protect yourself and your family. Yes, by going back to your country. If you want to come here, there's a legal way to do it, and I am all for that. Every immigrant that we have here that has come in legally, you got my love, brother and sisters. But if you're here illegally, nah, you're bringing wages down. You're taking American jobs. And you know what's worse is they don't pass off the savings to the consumer. They pocket it. So when people sit there and say, well, it's going to cost us more to run this business. No, they're saying they're not going to sit there and they're going to pass the cost on to you because they want to keep the same high-end profit margins. And in the cannabis industry, if there's a problem with that, look at the state legislature. They're the ones taxing cannabis to the point the black market is thriving because the taxes are so high on legal weed. So the raids occurred July 10th, about a week ago approximately, and they were at the Camarillo and Carpinteria facilities of Glass House Farms. I talked about this last week. One of the state's largest licensed cannabis companies that has had a lot of complaints about it. So the federal authorities reported more than 360 arrests of people suspected of being in the country illegally from those farm raids. And the truth of the matter is that they're not talking about in the news is the bigger story is the 14 migrant children that were rescued. Unaccompanied minors as young as 14 from potential exploitation, forced labor, human trafficking, and child labor violations with 10 of the children. A lot of this is alleged because they got to process it, but that's what they're coming with. And these stories tend to be true, not all the time, but I kind of find it hard to believe that, oh no, those 14 were there working in slave-like conditions legally? No. No, it's just not going to happen. So but here's the kicker. Among the 360 arrested, many of them were violent criminals, including a Mexican national convicted of kidnapping and attempted rape, sentenced to 7 years with a prior conviction for attempted child molestation. You have 14 minors in this camp. Somebody who's been convicted of rape and has a prior conviction for attempted child molestation. Now, that's probably the tip of the iceberg. That's where they caught him. How many times did he probably do it? He was working the same farm as to rescue children. But no, the cannabis industry, here's what they come out with. Karen Woodson, Senior Director of Compliance and Licensing for Kiva Brands and Board President of the California Cannabis Industry Association. And I could imagine a cannabis seminar. Woo, smoke-filled room. Anyway, she described a sense of complacency in the legalized cannabis community and noted, quote, "There's absolutely heightened risk working for a cannabis facility. It shouldn't be that way." So she then went on to emphasize you got to be prepared for these raids. You got to be prepared to protect your people. But the truth is, these raids expose alleged slave-like conditions. Again, 14 minors. And they had child labor complaints were filed in May of 2025. That's probably what led to the raid, or one of the factors, I bet you. There's currently an active state investigation by the California Department of Cannabis Control into illegal employment of minors at these licensed facilities. And before the raid, what would have happened? Knock, knock, I'm with the Cannabis Control. I'm here to do a inspection, and all the kids are gone. They're hidden away. Oh, looks good to me. What's that? That's some Jamaican gold there. Looking good. Yeah. You want a free sample? Oh, yeah. And here's the other kicker most people don't know. You can't be 18 and work. No one under 21 is legally allowed to work in the cannabis industry. But you see it all the time, especially at the pot shops where they sell this. You see many kids younger than 21 working there. So the legal cannabis market in California reached nearly $5 billion in sales last year and employed about 83,000 people. However, they are competing with the black market. Excuse me. Industry veterans, they are sitting here and say, I remember. This is bringing back memories of rage during the war on drugs. And that was in the 80s, the war on drugs. So they're lying. Probably some old timer retired. They went and got the snapshot, or an 80-year-old still needing to work week to week because he didn't save his money working the fields. I'll be serious. You'd be shocked. You'd be shocked. But the truth is they're deflecting by stating they have concerns that the Trump administration may be hardening its stance against federally illegal cannabis. And the truth is they're not. They're hardening their stance on these minors and illegals that these farms pretty much go to. And they pay them under the table. They pay them a lower wage. The ones that are legal are using stolen credit or stolen Social Security cards, numbers. So it's a very corrupt. Well, William, do you want to pay more? I want the illegals gone, and I want Americans, specifically, I'd like to see teenagers working there so they can, in the summer, so they can learn responsibility, learn accountability. Well, they won't take those jobs. Yeah, they will. What, we're saying they weren't Americans in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s? The 1700, 1800, 1900 that didn't take these jobs? Yes, they did. That's where they learn responsibility. That's where they learn how to be accountable. That's why our country's going to bleep. Because we don't hold, or rather teach, these basic fundamental rules of humanity to these kids in terms of what makes a good, productive citizen in society. It's as simple as that. Now, the reason they're saying that they feel betrayed is that Trump suggested during his campaign, last fall that he would downgrade the classification of weed to study its medical uses more easily. But he's made no moves toward rescheduling since then. But here's the problem. He's been in office 6 months. We are only at the 6-month mark. But the way they talk about Trump, he's been in office for 4 years. That's what it seems like. That's how much success he's had. And that's why they're so scared. During his confirmation hearing, Trump's nominee to lead the DEA refused to commit to removing cannabis from the list of serious narcotics. I'm indifferent to that. I used to be remove it, make it all legal, but I've seen the damage in California. I've seen the damage in Colorado. Maybe they need to review how that's done. Now, there's also an ongoing effort in Congress that aims to block the reclassification of cannabis. And this is driving the industry crazy. They were hoping Trump would remove that and we would see the proliferation of cannabis legalized. Look, cannabis is just, simply put, another service or product rather to tax. They don't care of the damage it does. If they could tax coke or crack and get away with it, they would in a heartbeat, because all they care about right now in Washington is tax. And they don't even call it taxes. They call it revenue. And then they act as if it's their money. The Office of Budget Management said, or Office of Government Management, one of the two, the ones that rate these bills, whether they're going to cost or not, they use static numbers. They said that Trump's big, beautiful bill would create a $4 trillion deficit because of lost revenue. Well, they were lying. It was taxes that we would get because of the tax cut. So the office didn't look at the fact, well, maybe they're overspending. No, they look at the fact, we're going to lose tax money. That's my money, your money, everybody's money. You see, we've got this warped sense of mind of how Congress or government now works and how they make this terminology. That's why I use the term illegal alien and not illegal immigrant or undocumented. They rather use undocumented immigrant because these are subliminal. You say illegal alien, boom, somebody's not supposed to be here. You say undocumented immigrant, there's nothing. It tones it down. And that's what the media, that's what Democrats want you to think. And the government's no different. Yeah, we're going to lose revenue. No, that's our tax money. You're not losing any revenue. We're overspending. Maybe you need to focus on that, you idiots. Anyway, let's get back to this. Steph Scher, he's the executive director of Americans for Safe Access. He warned the cannabis industry, on a video call. This was last week. Quote, "We can't take anything for granted. So he suggested growers learn to research warrants, retain criminal lawyers, and plan for bail payments. They're not going to do none of that. Why? Because they're illegals. They're going to hide them. They're going to try to pay their way into finding out when the raids are going to happen. But do you think they're going to have a lawyer on hand at the farm? No, they'll have to make a phone call. Lawyer's on his way. Well, he's not here. We're going to keep arresting these guys. And even then, it's a search warrant. They can just read it. That's it. Do you think these farms are going to go out of their way to defend an illegal alien? No. Why? One down, there's 100 more back there. They're using illegals for their own gain, for their own benefit. Let's be clear on that. Talking about, you need to be prepared. Mia Ortiz held a photo of her father. Her father's Rafael Ortiz. Mia is the daughter, obviously. She held the photo on her phone while talking to reporters on July 11th, stating she hadn't heard from him since the raid at Glass House Farms. Well, if he's legal, he's no worry. She's just talking out her. She's blowing smoke out her tush. Here's the truth. These are simply optics used by leftists, Democrats, illegals to play the victim, and then they're played up by the media while ignoring the fact that trafficked minors are being used at these farms, 14 rescued, and they hire rapists, child molesters. Let's look at the reality. See, this is what gets me out of the Republican Party. This needs to be front and center. The 14 minors, the rapists. You need to highlight them. Instead, the story got buried. And then MAGA influencers, those morons wanting to make a buck here off of engagement. Epstein. But they don't care that 14 minors here were rescued. They don't. They care about their engagement, their clicks. Idiots. Right, so again, the arrests included rapists such as Juan Duarte Velasquez, a Mexican national convicted of rape and DUI. So the operation removed dangerous offenders from the community and prevented potential harm to vulnerable workers, i.e. the 14 kids that were there. Other criminals apprehended: convicted kidnappers, serial burglars like Adriana Gonzalez, can't be right. Mexican national with 3 burglary convictions and DUI. It's not a good dude. Drunk drivers, including Jose Orellana. He's a Salvadoran national convicted DUI and hit and run, meaning he hit something and left the scene. Individuals charged with indecent exposure. Hey, little 14-year-old, come over here. I got something to show you. Again, individuals charged with indecent exposure, felony, firearm possession, and intent to sell narcotics. Oh, they say, got here some Jamaican gold. Oh, bro, I got it too. It's all over the field there. No, I got some coke or some crack. So then they lie. Well, our protesters gathered and stood to the side and were protesting. No, they were harassing and physically attacking these ICE agents. Well, they needed to have a dual team. Have the team that goes right into the farm, and then as they start doing things, then you have a team swoop in and grab them, arrest them all. Then you throw them in jail. You slow that process down where they're in jail before they get a hearing, and then you jack up the hearing, their flight risk. Keep them in jail. That's the only way this stops. When these people realize, oh, hell, I can go to jail for a while, they will stop. These enforcement actions help protect the public by detaining the convicted felons, rescuing the children. These are exploitative environments. And instead, the cannabis industry this is like the war on drugs, man. That wasn't a bad thing neither. And they also disrupted operations tied to labor violations. The federal officials built this case over weeks based on concerns about the child trafficking and criminal activity. Again, the complaint filed in May. Somebody tipped them off. We got a hot one here. So at the end of the day, these enforcement actions, what they do, they underscore the ongoing clash between the state level legalization and the federal prohibitions. That's how they frame it. The reality is these raids are uncovering and exposing trafficking of children, likely sex trafficking as well. You saw one guy was accused of raping a child, one of the individuals they caught, and these kids were minors. So the industry wants you to believe that this leaves the cannabis sector exposed to further federal interventions that could disrupt operations and livelihoods. That's only partially true. The reality is that this is cleaning up the industry, an industry with deep cartel ties, mind you. So it's not surprising to anyone that alleged slave-like conditions, criminals, and alleged trafficked minors were found, and maybe possible sex trafficking is being exposed. And that's the important thing here. And that's what needs to be brought to the forefront and to your attention. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to back to the 1800s. I'm going out west, honey. And trains were the only way you could get there. Well, California wants to build a high-speed rail. The problem is that high-speed rail is going nowhere. And the Fed said enough. I want to say it's after 15, 20 years, I want to say that this has been ongoing. Maybe not that long, but it's been a long time. Maybe 10, I don't know. Article, so this one came from the California Globe. California high-speed rail sues federal government following $4 billion funding cut, claiming petty political retribution. I also got information from the OC Register. Trump administration right to pull HSR funds. So, and then obviously I did other articles, minor articles. I plugged a few things here or there out, as well as AI. So the Trump team yanked $4 billion from California's high-speed rail project. They blame waste, delays, and broken promises. So now the state officials are suing. They're saying it's political payback, and it's going to kill jobs in the Central Valley. Look, the private sector can give jobs. It's not government's role to give jobs. The reality is that this train was supposed to be up and running years ago. It was supposed to be cheap. It was supposed to be efficient. And the reality is, it's not. Instead, it's way over budget, way behind schedule, and it still doesn't connect the major cities. So this fight kind of shows us, well, why? It makes you question, well, why is California throwing money at a project that just can't seem to deliver, can't seem to get completed? Gets a setback after setback. Now it's likely to stall out for good. Excuse me. Excuse me, my friends. So the federal government has not responded to the California lawsuit as of me going to press on Sunday. And today is the 20th. So what are the key points we need to be aware of? Well, the Trump administration, again, revoked $4 billion in federal funds. They based it on the Federal Railroad Administration Compliance Review. And what they highlighted, missed deadlines, lack of a clear funding plan, rising costs, incorrect projections. That's a real bad thing, by billions. Money issues, lack of money, and a litany of excuses and overpromises from the rail authority. The project was supposed to be done by 2020. Well, here we are, 2025. And now they're saying, hey, no, we're on our way. We're going to get Merced to Bakersfield by 2033. Full phase one, San Fran to LA, is going to be delayed to 2045. Wow. They got a 30-year project here, counting when it started. They're supposed to be 10 years. I don't know. Now, the total project cost has ballooned from 33. It's only going to be 33 billion, my fellow constituents. Now it's about 128 to 135 billion. And there's a $7 billion funding gap just to finish the Central Valley segment. They're hoping the feds will end up building this. And this is a great, I don't know how, it's just so frustrating just talking about it. Well, let's move on here. How many miles of track have been built? As of mid-2025, 0 miles of high-speed track have been laid. But they say, well, we got 171 miles under active construction. And 60 plus miles of guideway have been completed. Those are what you call ugly truths. Now, the California High-Speed Rail Authority, that's what the government references overpromising and not delivering. They filed a lawsuit against the feds this last Thursday, July 17th. That was done in LA. They claimed the funding cut was an arbitrary and capricious abuse of authority without cause. They claim it's stemming from petty political retribution because Donald Trump's dislike of California policies, including the HSR system. That doesn't matter. That's politics. Look what they did in North Carolina. The difference is they were okay with people dying in North Carolina, and they were caught red-handed in a FEMA emergency. This is completely different. This is just like, he don't like me. It doesn't matter whether he likes you or not. It's if they can prove what they are claiming. And the Trump administration can. And Newsom announced a lawsuit the same day. Quote, Trump's termination of federal grants for California high-speed rail reeks of politics. It's yet another political stunt to punish California. In reality, this is just a heartless attack on the Central Valley that will put real jobs and livelihoods on the line. We're suing to stop Trump from derailing America's only high-speed rail actively under construction. Newsom is such a liar, such a habitual liar. This is probably the first time you're hearing what he said, because nobody cares anymore, because they know this is a boondoggle. Anytime he speaks, he's just not believed. It's kind of like the mainstream media with their accusations of Trump, to the point America now gives Trump a long leash because they now assume the media is lying. How bad a reputation you have to be to get people to think that? So when Newsom speaks, oh yeah, he's just lying. They don't even know what it is. He's just lying. Yeah. I mean, Newsom could come out with pictures of his current mistress, allegedly, and say, well, no, they would believe that. Oh, man. But you get my point. So the CEO of the High Speed Rail Association's Ian Choudhury said, quote, canceling these grants without cause isn't just wrong. Well, they have cause, idiot. Let me keep going. It's illegal. These are legally binding agreements, and the authority has met every obligation as confirmed by repeated federal reviews as recently as February 2025. America's only high-speed rail project underway is fast approaching the track laying phase with 171 mile, yada, yada, yada. But then he goes on to say, okay, no. The track laying phase with 171 miles under active. Let me just reread it since I screwed it up for you guys. Canceling these grants without cause isn't just wrong. It's illegal. These are legally binding agreements, and the authority has met every obligation as confirmed by repeated federal reviews as recently as February 2025. America's only high-speed rail project underway is fast approaching the track laying phase with 171 miles under active construction and design. 15,500 jobs created and more than 50 major structures completed. This is no time for Washington to walk away on America's transportation future. This is a great speechwriter because this came from a speech. I mean, prepared statements, but it's what you call a half truth or a quarter of a truth. That may all be true, but when you look at the bigger picture, it's not the government's job to create jobs. Period. End of story. It's not. And that's what they're basing some of this stuff on. But he's also not being truthful in a lot of his claims. So what will happen is people will say, well, he's an expert. It's got to be true. And they refuse to look at the data. And that's what Washington is using. That's why Trump has literally won every case as it goes up. Once he gets away from the leftist, progressive, activist judges that are purposely creating TROs, temporary restraining orders, to delay the project, once he gets past those, he tends to win. So Sean Duffy, the U.S. Transportation Secretary, he did respond. This is California's fault. Governor Newsom and the complicit Democrats have enabled the waste for years. Federal dollars are not a blank check. They come with a promise to deliver results. After over a decade of failures, it's been over 10 years, CHSRA's mismanagement and incompetence has proven it cannot build its train to nowhere on time or on the budget. Remember, it's supposed to be done by 2020. Now they're saying 2045. Think about it. So they haven't met their needs. So you see how the lie is slowly exposed? And his final comment is, Sean Duffy, the Transportation Secretary, it's time for this boondoggle to die. I agree. Trump, the railroad we were promised still does not exist and never will. This project was severely overpriced, overregulated, and never delivered. So, just to reiterate a couple of points, this project originally was supposed to cost $33 billion in 2008, with the planned San Francisco to LA line to be open by 2028. They haven't laid one track to get that going. The costs have increased to $128 billion. Wow. That's 3 times the original cost. Then 135 billion, 4 times the original cost. Now, partial completion is said to be for the late 2030s, when it was supposed to be completed by 2028. And it still needs another 100 billion more to connect the cities. And some estimates during Jerry Brown's term as governor said it would cost upwards of $350 billion. So we're only looking at numbers right now for these little small jobs. Overall, to get it all done, $350 billion you're looking at. Original cost, $33 billion. More than 15 years ago, we were promised a high-speed rail from LA to San Francisco. At most, the cost would have been a few tens of billions. 30 billion. So the initial Central Valley segment, that also remains incomplete. It's been more than 7 years that we all remember that photo that showed construction of the elevated section. Kind of how, like when you see the freeways and they're not done, they're like this, just to drop off. You're like, damn, you fall from that, you're dead. When you think construction workers. So it's incomplete. And they say it's because of lack of funding and difficulty obtaining needed land. Think about that. The project is frivolous. I agree with the opponents. And it is a money pit. The data, the time frame, the broken promises, the deadlines not met, the lack of money, the exponentially ballooning costs. It's a money pit. Where has the current money gone? You got to ask that question. An investigation should be done. So this lawsuit lacks legal basis as the federal funding is not a blank check. And that's what they're expecting. Now, Newsom said this project is creating jobs. Tax dollars do not create jobs. Tax dollars use our money in a way that, I guess what I'm trying to say is they should have put this out to private contractors. They probably are in certain ways, but private contractors that are aligned with the union or with the Democrats, they should have been made it open to outside companies, because obviously what they're doing right now is not working. Taxpayers are under no obligation to support a government boondoggle just because they say it's going to create jobs. That's what Nancy Pelosi was touting when Biden. A lot of his jobs were federal jobs, taxpaying jobs. What I'm saying is they are not generating anything that goes back into the economy. Well, William, they're getting a check and they're spending it. No, that's not what I'm talking about. So all of this, what little trust he may have had, that's being questioned. Newsom's discernment of wasteful spending is being questioned. For those of you like me, working class, discernment to judge wisely. All right, so this fight, it caused out years of screw-ups and wasted tax dollars. And we're long overdue for answers, people. It could and should push the feds to crack down not only here, but to crack down harder on all bloated messes like this in other states. And this fallout's bigger than just a high-speed rail to nowhere. It's about knowing when to pull the plug on a failed project. Because what's happened here is this infrastructure project has turned into political theater. And the political theater is doing nothing but supporting the boondoggle. The political theater is being brought on by Democrats. All right. So last week I talked about why Newsom is unelectable, how he's a tomato can. And boxing, a tomato can is a boxer who's been set up. He fights people he's going to beat, whether it's just people who can't box and he beats them, or people who are bought to take a dive. That's what a tomato can is in boxing. That's what Newsom is as a political candidate. But Newsom has hit the podcast campaign trail, and he's just flat out lying. You know, Sean Ryan, nice enough guy, former SEAL. He's just a train wreck as a podcast interviewer. If he's interviewing something you align with or know about, you can figure out what's true, what's not. But then when he brings a politician on, that politician's going to lie. Newsom flat out lies to him. And Sean Ryan's like, because he doesn't know how to respond. Terrible interview. Don't bring those interviewees on. Sean, if you don't know or you're not going to prepare to push back on the lie, don't bring him on. I mean, him and Tucker are terrible. The only time Tucker will bring somebody on that I know of has been Ted Cruz that he went after. I mean, with Putin, Tucker, wipe that off your lip there. in the Putin and the Khomeini interviews. I used to be a loyal Tucker supporter and subscriber, and after years, like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Tucker Carlson is that born again, where if you disagree, it's because you're a heathen. And again, Tucker has daddy issues. His dad lived in this world. Everything he loathes, his dad was part of, and he loves his father to death. And I say daddy issues because it's like a girl has daddy issues, dates the older guy, he has issues. That's Tucker with his dad. Yeah. I mean, he may not be, but he acts like an anti-Semite. I believe at this point, him and Candace are. I've always thought Dave Smith was. And Dave Smith now is being challenged on the fact that his claim to being a Jew may not be by blood, but by marriage, some relative or something. Anyway, I didn't bother looking at that. He's such an insignificant name now. He's a name, but he's so insignificant because the libertarians are pretty much insignificant politically speaking. So let's get back to Gavin Newsom here, though. Gavin Newsom is pushing for a bigger stage. To be specific, he's pushing for a presidential run. But his habit of twisting the truth, personal scandals, policy switches, all those are lies that he's been caught in and created a lie to try to get out of. That's a non-starter. He has no trust and he will be exposed. But I want to talk about how much he lies. His health mandates, playing favorites with donors, his women's sports issue. That's a term I'm looking for. He's a pathological liar. That's what he is. He lies incessantly with no awareness. He has no self-awareness of how bad the lie is. And then he also exhibits signs of antisocial personality disorder. He's manipulative, selfish, and he is cunning. And these traits are frequently observed in political beasts, politicians. And you see it through deception about their military service, their sports participation, even their music preference, their education, their employment history, how they achieve their wealth, the extramarital affairs, and even hidden gold bars or money in freezers. Money in freezers is a Democrat mayor in New Orleans, ex-mayor, and the gold bars is former Senator Menendez. So, pathological liars. In political circles, these traits often emerge through false claims again, or deceptions. Military service. Remember Democrat U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal? He repeatedly said he served in Vietnam, saying things like, quote, "We have learned something important since the days that I served in Vietnam." In reality, he served stateside in the Marine Corps Reserve. Then he said, "I misspoke." Let's not forget former U.S. Senator Tom Harkin. In 1979, he claimed to have flown combat air patrols. The reality, he had a non-combat role which had nothing to do with flying missions or Vietnam. So my point is, they'll lie about their war service. Newsom never served. He doesn't have the balls to serve. Then there's sports participation. President Joe Biden, he's on a lot of these that I chose on. They just don't have time for all of them. And Gavin Newsom falls into this one. But Joe Biden claimed he was a standout athlete in college, including being a football star. The reality, there's no record of this. He played briefly as a backup, was not a starter or a standout. I'll get to Newsom in a second. Educational background, Joe Biden again said he graduated at the top of his law school, had 3 degrees, and was an outstanding student in political science. Reality, he graduated near the bottom of his class and was not recognized with any honors. Employment history, here's a good one. Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren, Massachusetts. Warren claimed for years that she was fired from a teaching job for being pregnant. I mean, it's not just, they don't say it just one time, it's over and over and over, and it's documented. But in Warren's case, county records shows the school board voted unanimously to renew her contract. And Warren herself said in 2007 that she left the job to pursue graduate studies. She was trying to sit there and push a narrative, a false narrative about how women are treated at the job, especially if they want to have a child. She lied, which is her nature. Then from 1986 to 1995, Elizabeth Warren self-identified as Pocahontas, a Native American in law school directories. And it wasn't just Harvard that we all know about, but it was the University of Texas and the University of Pennsylvania. And the Harvard Law School promoted her as a Native American hire to enhance its diversity image. The Harvard Crimson quote referred to her as, quote, the school's Native American faculty member. So she took a Native American slot. Now she said, well, no, I self-identify because my relative said I had the nose of the Adam's apple or something like that. Extramarital affairs, it's like for a politician, that's a resume builder. Bill Clinton, John, and I'm not knocking them. That's a private issue. But when you go and spew yourself as this honest character in public service, come clean or face the consequences like John Edwards did, Gary Hart, even Donald Trump. Then there's Barack Hussein Obama with Larry Sinclair. Now that's alleged, but the media never covered that. They poo-pooed it, but yeah, they went after Trump with Stormy Daniels. That's why I feel it's my obligation to bring up Barack Hussein Obama and Larry Sinclair kissing the tree, Kissing. Larry, rest in peace. And then I remember after that scene, after Obama left office, he went to like a 40-man all-man retreat in the bathhouse. Chicken down, down. That's what I was joking. But then WRAL in North Carolina, it's a television station, came out and was knocking and implying that all these Republican males went to their own retreat. I go, hey, where's your story on Obama and his 40-man bathhouse retreat after leaving political office? Oh, man. I love throwing this back in Democrats' face because they had no comeback for it. I go, it's not true. I go, they never investigated it. If somebody brought it up, they called you racist. I don't care. Call me whatever the bleep you want. Larry. Cheers. Hip, hip, hooray for Larry Sinclair. Some of the other traits of sociopaths who become politicians or narcissists, or what's the term? I always forget the term. Pathological liars like Newsom. They even lie about preference and music. They'll lie about their source of wealth. Newsom doesn't talk about that so much because even though his background tries to portray himself as a businessman, the Getty family kind of built his businesses in his name. And that's kind of put in a way where it's easy to figure out. And he's so anti-oil, but the Getty family, they got their money from oil. Then there's the quirks, like how they hide valuables, the gold bars, the cash, stash, and freezers. Quirky people. But compulsive liars, they've always been the truth. Doesn't matter. All matters, large and small. Finding honesty awkward. Yeah, we're just an average student in school. See, for me, that's like, hey, I was an average Joe, but if I can do it, you can too. Kind of inspire people, not them. They want to be seen as the war hero, the scholar. Oh, man. Lies feel natural to them. It's a habit that mirrors many political falsehoods. Let's talk about the extramarital affair. Again, to each their own, but Newsom has tried to knock others about it, conveniently forgetting his. That was as San Francisco mayor in 2007. He had an affair. He slept with his campaign manager's wife, who also served as his secretary. I'm sorry, I'm beating your ass. Then I'm divorcing the wife, maybe slapping her or having broken the bond. And I would expect the same done to me. But if I'm the campaign manager and he's one of my best friends and he does that, yeah, I'm beating his ass. No ifs, ands, or buts. If he's bigger than me, I'm taking a stick to his ass. So then to deflect from the story, he stated he would quit drinking and seek professional help for problems with alcohol. That was done after the story, after he was exposed. But here's where it gets interesting. Remember, pathological liar. 2018 statement in Sacramento Bee when he had his gubernatorial run. He said, there was no rehab. I just stopped. There was no treatment, nothing related to any of that stuff. He lied. See, that's not going to fly if he runs for POTUS. That will be hammered over and over and over on the campaign trail, in the primary, as well if he makes it past the primary on the presidential campaign trail. He's not going to make it past the primary. That in and of itself will destroy him. He says he stopped because it was a good thing to stop and clarifying there is no 12th step. This goes against what he said. And here's the other thing. Anybody who's an alcoholic is going to say he's throwing everybody under the bus, saying he didn't need that. A true alcoholic would. And in 2025, the Daily Mail report exposed a rehab claim as a cover for his affair. On COVID, Newsom lied about COVID-19 severity after being caught multiple times, violating his own mandated lockdowns, masking retirement requirements, and vaccine orders that he imposed on California. It all goes down to the French Laundry. The reason I can say that he lied about the severity is if it had been the severity he said, if COVID had been as severe as they were all saying, we'd all be locked down protecting ourselves. Or how do they know? Instead, they're all out partying. Remember that big old Democrat fundraiser or big event they were at? The brown help. The brown help. They're all masked up and they're all laughing, drinking champagne, unmasked. There was never COVID-19 pandemic. They created it. Donors. He's on his knees for his donors. In the fast food minimum wage law, Newsom carved out an exemption for his childhood friend and political donor, Greg Flynn, owner of Panera Bread. So Panera Bread were able to avoid the $20 per hour mandate. I don't know if they could have. If I've been one of those businesses, I would have sued the hell out of him. Sports career, he claimed he played varsity baseball at Santa Clara University and was drafted by the Texas Rangers, the Lone Ranger. The truth, he never played a varsity game, was a junior varsity recruit, and was not drafted. In other words, after he was recruited, they realized you ain't all that, bro. It's at the bench. Then you have his policy shifts, more frequent than a comedian at this point. And he's setting himself up for the presidential run. On transgenderism, on biological men and growth sports, Newsom pandered with no direct answers with Charlie Kirk. We all know the story. It's not fair. And then on Sean Ryan's podcast, he framed it as I appreciate you trying to figure out what the whole LGBTQ and trans thing is. First of all, gay and trans are not interchangeable, but he made it interchangeable, and then he called it deeply unfair. But when he's in office, he's like all over the LGBT, probably having an affair with Joe Bob tranny. Wait, we can't say tranny. All right, I apologize. Transgender. I mean, so he says all this, goes back to office, does nothing about an executive order he could have done or a policy to remove the biological boys from women's sports in California, did nothing. So he's just pandering. He has no credibility. Knowing a political lie such as Newsom's repeated instances, that erodes his credibility on everything, from whether it's personal story to public policy. Newsom is a pathological liar. I mean, even just beyond his documented lies, his governance of this state alone raises serious questions about how he would handle a presidency, how he would be held accountable. Well, it's different on the national stage. He struggles to keep from telling the truth because he's a serial liar, a pathological liar, a habitual liar who's already being easily exposed. His lies unravel fast. Any real shot at the White House will get torched early in the primary. If he makes it past the primary, I will be stunned. It will show how weak the Democrat field actually is. There you have it, my friends. Those are the three main stories of tonight. The cannabis industry trying to deflect from the situation that it's a corrupt industry. They use slave labor with minors working the fields, slave-like living conditions, minors potentially put in pedophile positions. The high-speed rail to nowhere, updating you on that with good news. And obviously Newsom's lies. So let us move on to the Cali Blitz. And as most of you know, those who do follow my podcast, the Cali Blitz is my lightning round. So what is first up? Get on my notes here. Oceanside home and cars firebomb. Political motive is what's suspected. Oceanside is about 25 minutes from me. Actually, it's about 15 minutes. It's 20 minutes away from me. Go there at times. They've built it up. Beautiful area now. Military area. In fact, Oceanside's where they filmed Top Gun scene. So an Oceanside family's home and vehicles were firebombed July 13th. Authorities suspected political motives linked to their conservative activism of the owner of the home. Multiple Molotov cocktails were thrown at the home of Rick Felkins and his family. 2 cars were destroyed and it damaged the house. This was hours after Felkins attended a Trump rally or campaign event. Now, the ATF and the Sheriff's Department, they're supposedly investigating this. It shouldn't be hard, I don't think, to figure out who did this. But they noted that his conservative post on X and his vocal support for Trump was a potential trigger. They need to find this person and throw him in jail. I don't care if it's a 16-year-old kid. You try him as an adult. You throw his ass in jail. Yeah, I believe it's probably a guy. No injuries occurred, but the family, including Felkin's wife and 4 children, were home. And he's been harassed for months online. You can't tell me there's not some kind of ring to be able to catch the cars or something like that. But this is a pattern with the left. The left tried to assassinate President Trump not once but twice. The left tried to assassinate GOP representatives in 2018 on a baseball field. The left captured a stalker trying to kill Justin Kavanaugh at his home. Biden was asked why they had no protection to the justices, as the threats were clear, and yet he made no formal request. And that silence spoke volumes. I believe the left wanted one of these justices killed so Biden could nominate a leftist. The Democrats, they just spew vile talk and hate, and they promote violence. We've seen that with Joe Biden, Maxine Waters, Tim Walz, and others. And this rhetoric they know will lead to violence, and they keep it up. BLM murders accounted for about 25 deaths, give or take, depending on how you look at the deaths. But there's been no accountability with the arrests that we know of to protect us, the civilians, from these violent riots that happened. They didn't care about the deaths. They didn't care about protecting the civilians. And most of these cases have gone nowhere. Some specific examples. Maxine Waters, in 2018, she told supporters to create a crowd and push back on Trump officials in public spaces. In 2021, she urged protesters to get more confrontational if the Derek Chauvin wasn't guilty. Now, it turns out he didn't die. George Floyd did not die because of the knee in the back. He died because he was a drug user. Now, there's debate about that, but there's also a connection between Chauvin and Floyd that nobody's talked about because they got what they wanted out of it, riots. And the judge said those comments could jeopardize the trial, and they didn't. The fix was in. Joe Biden, the leaked donor call just days before the first Trump assassination attempt, said it's time to put Trump in a bullseye. He's repeatedly labeled Trump and his supporters as a threat to the soul of the nation and everything America stands for. Joe Biden's another pathological liar. Tim Walz, shootings of Minnesota lawmakers. A former NYPD lieutenant familiar with these type of scenarios blamed Walz's political climate and rhetoric. The shooter was a former Walz appointee. Walz denied any connection. That was blown out the water. Well, he registered Democrat. It's an open primary. Democrats, or he was registered Republican. Democrats register as Republicans all the time to vote against a candidate they don't want to see advance. So they're lying there. Trump, Walz appointed him. He actually had a letter that came out said that Walz wanted him to kill the Democrat senator so he can run for senator. This won't stop until we jail these individuals for a long, long time, life in some cases, on each count. All right, La Mesa Assembly members' bill aims to conceal lawmakers' addresses. This is another one that's right near where I live. Assembly member, I believe, don't quote me, I believe it's AB 1392. It seeks to restrict public access to California lawmakers' personal contact details, citing safety concerns. I want to say it's being done by, no, I can't remember who it's being done. But anyway, it passed the Judiciary Committee. I want to say Shirley Weber, but I don't know. She's Secretary of State now. Or is it Lachey Sharp Collins? I'm not sure. You know what? Let me figure this out here real quick for us. Anyway, the key points is it's supposed to cover local officials and candidates. And it's a response to the 2025 shootings of Minnesota lawmakers. However, the suspect did use people search. All right, hold on one second. Anyway, it's a response to the Minnesota shootings. Okay, yes, it's Lachey Sharp Collins. He's one of the authors of AB 1392. Who's the other? So now the First Amendment Coalition, Heath Flora is also it's a Republican. Idiot. The First Amendment Coalition is opposing the bill, arguing it hinders journalists' ability to verify officials' district residency. That's true. That's true. And I agree. This is going to fail just because of the Constitution. If Democrats would stop the hateful rhetoric, there would be no worry here. Let's be honest. Democrat Representative Salud Carvajal, he doxed an ICE agent, shared his business card with protesters. They endangered him. He was then attacked and hospitalized. This just shows hypocrisy because, let's see. Because Democrats are prioritizing their own protection from threats, but yet they're inviting attacks on law enforcement. Why do I say that? You have SB 627, No Secrets Police Act. They're saying that ICE can't sit there and mask themselves. They're masking themselves because they have death threats or being doxxed. Democrats know this. They don't want them masked so they can be doxxed, so they can be attacked by their constituents and protesters. But yet they want themselves protected. You see the hypocrisy? And they're just hypocrites. And I hope this bill fails, and it'll have to fail in courts because Democrats will pass it. All right. Next story. In-N-Out president Lindsay Snyder relocates to Tennessee amid California challenges. Now, I told you many months ago that In-N-Out was expanding and moving part of their corporate office to Tennessee. Here's the president. She announced her family's moving from California to Tennessee. But she's saying it's because it's difficult to raise a family in California. Her decision, she said this on the Relatable podcast with Ali Bestucky, which is a conservative, has to do with California as a state where it's bad to raise your family. Now, she's probably considered and also said, well, it's part of the business here. I need to be there, yada, yada, yada. She doesn't have to be there, but she moved her whole family. Most of the time, these people don't move their family. They just move there and they back and forth. That's how much money they're making, or they'll foot the company bill. But she knows it's a better place to raise your kid. And she's not alone. 1.5 million Californians have left the state since 2020. 350 corporations, including SpaceX, Chevron, and Oracle, have fled since 2018. All under Newsom's watch. And he wants to be president. All right. California's financial transparency falls short. There's a transparency report. There's a July 2025 report that said, you elected officials, you've got to boost your fiscal accountability and align with the nation's best practices. Truth in Accounting 2025's financial transparency score gave California a low score based on its annual comprehensive financial report because they failed to meet key criteria like timely reporting and clear net position data. So a top score of 100 requires a clean audit opinion. That's 50 points. And then an undistorted net position, another 15 points. But California's delays and unclear financials is destroying their score. There's a lack of transparency. California used outdated 2022 data in its 2025 fiscal report, and they knew it. It overstated its pension liabilities were Some say as high as 1.9 trillion. For sure, 300 billion. But when you actually look at it and you put all the numbers in, you're like, man, this could be as high as 1.9 trillion. But anyway, overstated pension liabilities because of misleading deferred inflows, meaning money down the road later. They only scored a 5 of 15 on the transparency there. Wow. And it hid billions in retirement debt by excluding teacher pension liabilities. That earned them a 0 of 10 for off-balance sheet disclosures. They're just liars. When you have a one-party system rule, they will openly lie. We are in a messed up state, my friends. And the California Republican Party, thank God it's under new leadership with Corin Rankin. And then we have the Los Angeles County Republican Party is under new leadership with Roxanne Hogue. Hopefully that can go somewhere. I have major concerns with the San Diego Republican Party. Paula Whitzel has proved not be very good. Her first term, soap drama, she got removed. Then she came back, and a lot of people say she's nothing but a Carl DeMaio crony. I don't know. That's what the word on the street is. And this state was deep red when I first moved here in the 90s. It's now deep blue. We just lost a supervisor's race because we don't know how to campaign. We don't help the candidates. It's just a mess here in San Diego. It's disgustingly bad. That's a wrap. That's it for this week's show. That's it for Fired Up California. So we've torn into Newsom's lies, exposed a high-speed rail mess, and called out the hypocrisy in Sacramento. Before I go, though, don't forget to bookmark grumblingsmedia.com. Follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify under the handle Grumblings Media. I am William Del Pilar, and tune in next week for more hard-hitting truth on Fired Up California with your favorite conservative Latino, me, where I keep the heat on and the facts straight. And that's one thing you can do. You can sit there and Google everything I said, and it's going to come as true, or that's true, but it's his opinion in terms of the angle. I don't lie, my friends. Until next week, stay sharp and stay safe out there. I am William Del Pilar, and I am out.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.